Georgian takeover continues following Marvin a big-time main event win last weekend over Petr Yan. We have Roman Dolidze riding a 4-fight win streak, 3-fight bonus streak, our 2022 Male Fighter of the Year. With Fight Night Picks is Roman Dolidze, and he's going to be looking to take on the former middleweight title challenger in this UFC's division, in the Italian Dream, Marvin Vettori. Matt, I don't normally start off with storylines on this one, but Roman Dolidze for this fight is training with like half the roster that's on this card at Tiger Muay Thai, and he's training with a lot of really good fighters, and I'll bring up names as we go along. But Marvin Vettori, a longtime King's MMA guy, he's aligned himself with Extreme Couture. I find that extremely interesting coming into this fight.
Too much, too young, too fast. I got a weird problem with this fight, Craig. I really enjoy the rise that Roman Dolidze has had throughout the middleweight division and what he has been able to show.
Whoa, time out. You sound like a broken record. Guys won 3 times as an underdog, 2 of those fights on short notice, 3 performance bonuses. Fighter of the year, 2022.
He could not have impressed me anymore last season, but this is a weird matchup for him. Again, we bring up the poster that we have to our right over here about how Anthony Smith was able to pull off the big upset over Volkan Oezdemir. He was the guy who was ranked in the double digits in the division, who was given that big opportunity to fight up against the number 1, number 2 ranked contender in Alexander Volkov. In Volkan Oezdemir. And for Roman Dolidze, he does find himself in a very similar position in this division. He looked great last year, he had a lot of promise, but this is a significant step up in competition between his recent string of opponents, and it will be interesting because Marvin Vettori, if you've only watched him since the pay-per-view against Adesanya and the fight against Robert Whittaker, then okay, maybe you don't have the greatest of opinion against or of him, but Marvin Vettori probably gets more shoutouts than any other fighter in this whole entire channel. And yes, I'm probably guilty of this, but Marvin Vettori is the guy who I bring up every single week.
Yes, it's not me that's shouting him out.
No, it's me, 100. Now, you shout about every now and then, I guess, but I do really like to bring up the fact that Marvin Vettori is a guy who, when he came into the UFC, had good boxing, some basic kicks, had great wrestling, but we didn't really see the blend of those two skill sets together. But, of course, as he was able to go up through the ranks, we really have seen him implement not only the wrestling, but the wrestling with the boxing, and with his plus cardio, too. And I really do think all those things are going to play a factor against Roman Dolidze. This is a weird fight, because I would like to see Roman Dolidze. I know he's 34 years old, but in the middleweight division, you've got some time at 34. We saw Yoel Romero fight for the title in his 40s. So for Dolidze, it would have been nice to see him fight only maybe 2 spots up in the rankings, maybe 3 spots up in the rankings, because no matter what your opinion of Marvin Vettori is, we have seen him fight the majority of the top-level guys in the middleweight division. We know what he excels at, we know what his weaknesses are in, and we know he has lasting ability for 25 minutes, not only 15 minutes, and I do think Dolidze is really going to struggle with the pace of a guy like Vettori.
And that's going to be the weird thing about it. Now, I thought all those holes were kind of shored up for Roman Dolidze because he was a guy, WWFC, he was a champ over there, light heavyweight champ, and his striking was wild, but that's what got it done. He comes into the UFC, fights Hadley at light heavyweight, and he beats him, showing those skills. And then he takes on John Allen, and it was a little bit of a puzzling fight. Now, Dolidze wins by split, but he was in positions. He was at Extreme Couture at that time, where he was like, okay, coach, you like this, coach? Like, hey, coach. And Eric Nixick was kind of, yeah. So it was a bit of a weird one. Dolidze wins, so what? Now, at this point, I'm going to be a middleweight, I'm going to be a light heavyweight, nobody knows what's going to go on. So then he drops down to middleweight and he fights Trevin Giles. And he got caught in that a little bit, and he slowed down a little bit. And I just remember, Giles out there pumping that jab, and Roman's kind of eating the jab as the fight goes on. But since he started to win, he's kind of gone back to the Roman of old. And this is the craziest part about it, Matt. Roman Dolidze is our 2022 Fighter of the Year on the channel and the award show. People wanted Dolidze to win Submission of the Year over Jack Hermanson with a calf slicer.
Fair?
He didn't even fucking win by submission due to a calf slicer.
Well,
he sliced his calf and knocked him out. Or won by TKO.
It was close.
So for Dolidze, again, the Kyle Dawkins fight, he goes balls to the wall like he used to with WWFC. The fight against Phil Hawes, he does the same thing. And then against Hermanson, first round, it's a little bit of back and forth. Second round, Dolidze of old. I just wonder, again, now the tricks are out. You've switched gyms, and Marvin Vettori's probably making friends with Sergey Spivak and Chris Curtis and boys.
Is Roman Dolidze Javi Baez with the Mets? I know that's a weird comparison to make, but Javi Baez was a guy who was very talented with the Chicago Cubs, but after they had won the World Series, people noticed there was a weird hitch in his swing, and they did start to notice weaknesses in his game. Now, he went to the Mets, it was really good for them, to his credit. Now, was terrible with the Detroit Tigers last year, but I think for Dolidze, it is odd, because again, he has obvious strengths and weaknesses. Do you know what the one X factor in this fight, though, is that I think Roman can have a lot of success in? He lands damaging shots from weird angles. When guys are close to him, again, the Kyle Dawkins knee is an obvious example of it, but of course, he has great dexterity, not only in his hips, but his arms too.
Well,
and he can make you pay when you think your head is defended. And Marvin Vettori is a guy who has great wrestling, but he will get caught in some of those just holding his opponent up against the cage spots. And if he does that against Dolidze is one of the rare few who is like Travis Brown, to where, okay, when he's defending a takedown, he's a legitimate threat from that position too. So that's why I think this is such a fun fight. But I did play my hand a little bit. I just think Dolidze needs a couple more fights before he's really ready for some of these elite guys in the division.
Dolidze's ranked 8th in the division. Vettori's ranked 4th. And if you look at the 3-fight sample size for Vettori, the last 3 have been kind of tough, and you almost have to think
he didn't look bad against Adesanya, though. I think that's fair.
He's got to reinvent himself a little bit. Against Adesanya, he was kind of chasing a little bit, and maybe there were points that were good. The fight against Paulo Costa, he wins at light heavyweight, and it was a banger, but
his cardio looked good.
Paulo Costa brought it, and then the fight against Robert Whittaker, he couldn't figure out the distance at all in that fight, and Whittaker had a ton of success. Whittaker even took him down, but you look at it, 4 main event slots for Vettori: Hermanson, Holland, UFC 263 against Adesanya, and then against Costa. 2 co-main event slots, 1 against Whittaker, that was UFC France, the last time we saw Vettori, and 1 against Carl Robertson, where they had bad blood, Shibata was shed, and Vettori, you talk about a guy that like saw every single move. He probably could have taken chopsticks and flicked a fly as he was going for the submission win there. Vettori looked amazing in that one. But again, you know that Dolidze, a Filho world champion grappling the last time they had the tournament, and an ADCC trials champ as well. You look at the odds, Vettori's a pretty big favorite in the matchup. Dolidze is a pretty big underdog, riding a wave of success. We have a look at the Topology votes, Matt. Honest to goodness, I have no idea where this is going to
go. I don't either.
I'm going to say over under 70% Marvin Vettori.
I think they'll be over.
I think they're going to be over. Slightly under. 1,055 total votes, 68% Vettori, 89% by decision. For the 32% that have Dolidze, 43% by decision, 29% by knockout. I think the Jack Hermanson fights are telling for both guys. Now, Jack Hermanson doesn't fight like Roman Dolidze. Marvin Vettori does. So, for Roman against Jack, wait it out, figure it out, and then go out there and implement your own game plan. For Marvin Vettori, when he fought Jack Hermanson, what did he do? Match the volume, kept a steady output, and looked good as the fight went on. Now, that fight was a 5-round fight, and against Roman, it's easier said than done. But Trevin Giles had that kind of success as well. So for Vettori, clinch, hang out at range, and that's about that, I guess.
And that's why I do have Vettori in this fight. I think Dolidze can look good for a couple of minutes every single round, but I do think he's going to struggle at a minute-to-minute basis by a scoring criteria, if you will, because at the end of a lot of rounds, Vettori will have clinch control, he will have cage control, he'll probably have a takedown here or there. I do respect the grappling of Dolidze, don't get me wrong, but Marvin Vettori's never been a guy who's been out there and really got sufficiently out-grappled. Now, you bring up the takedown he gave up to Robert Whittaker, but that was at the end of the fight. Vettori was down by 2 rounds already. He was very aggressive at that point. So Whittaker just ducked under and took what was easiest for him. But I do favor Vettori not only with the output, but just with his activity too. I didn't think a lot of Marvin Vettori before he did do his rise to the top of the division, but I've been sadly impressed by what I've seen. And he's kind of turned into, I don't mean this in a disrespectful term whatsoever. I mean this as a huge compliment. He's coming to Derek Brunson. You know, if you beat Marvin Vettori, you might be ready for a title shot. You're probably ready for a title shot, but you're definitely one of the elite of the division. So if Dolidze is able to spring the upset this weekend, I would be very surprised, but I do have Marvin Vettori.
Old friends become strangers. New friends become dangerous. Never does it ever let me down. Tell me you have real friends. Tell you have real friends. Matt, I don't like the guy that sings that song, but Roman Dolidze training with OFC middleweight champ Daniil Prakaza and Dmitry Arshkev, some really heavy hitters over there with Tiger Muay Thai. People get mad because I was on the Dolidze train coming into the UFC. Give me the big underdog, Roman Dolidze.
If you're going to look at the piece of paper to remember their name.
I'm back on. To remember Tory Lanez, the guy's an absolute... That is the song.
I just mean to remember the guy...
But when it comes down to this one, Matt, for Roman Dolidze, training with some of the best over there with Tiger Muay Thai, I favor him in this matchup for the fact that Vettori hasn't looked as good, even in the Costa fight. However, if you're going to get the secrets, you're going to figure out what the 11 herbs and spices are at Extreme Couture, Marvin Vettori could very well have a leg up in this competition. So we're split on the pick. Matt's got the Italian dream. I'm going with Roman Dolidze in the matchup. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have in a very volatile middleweight matchup. Some great fights on this card, including a welterweight title fight up at the top between Edwards and Usman. The third time, keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.